Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm back with another video. It is Saturday afternoon, January 31st, 2026. And I think everybody's quite aware, there's a huge controversy about what's going on in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was recently in a conversation with a German friend of mine who was explaining to me, how the ICE agents are completely justified in doing what they're doing, and the people who are protesting are agents of George Soros. So I thought I would dig into this a little bit and see for myself what is the background of this whole situation. Basically, ICE is saying it's, what is it, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and so immigration. You think that immigration is near the border, right? But they're right in the heartland. I mean, Minnesota. How this is Middle America. Literally Middle America. So I thought I would check and see, because my German friend is explaining how immigrants are all terrible and they're causing total destruction of society. Now, that may be true in the case of Germany, but of course, people need to remember that what is the cause of this immigration problem in the first place? Well, it happens to be that, U.S. and Western imperialism has gone into Syria and Libya and Afghanistan and Iraq and created havoc in these countries, making them unlivable. And so people end up going where the money is, which is Germany and Europe. Then you have the situation in Ukraine where the German government, Angela Merkel, was a party to the Minsk agreements. And she said, well, we didn't really care. We were just playing for time. We wanted Ukraine to build up its military so they could attack Russians in eastern Ukraine and then take down Russia itself. We didn't have any intention of being sincere about that. That was she didn't use those exact words, but that was clearly the intent. Now, coming back to the Americas, most of the people who come to the United States are from Mexico. And what's that all about? Well, it turns out that when NAFTA came into effect, 30 years ago, basically it screwed the Mexican farmers and made it impossible for them to make a living. So what are they going to do? They come to the United States and become dishwashers and car mechanics and whatever work they can find. And eventually, they manage to integrate mostly into the American society. And of course, Venezuela, you put massive sanctions on Venezuela, make it impossible for people to live there. And so where are people going to go? They're going to come to the United States. There was even a movie about it called El Norte, going north. So that's the background. That's the reason why we have an immigration crisis, is because the West has created it by destroying country after country and making it impossible for people to live an honest living. Why would people even leave? Why did my relatives come to the United States? Because life was unlivable there. It was dangerous, and it was difficult to make a living. And so they said, okay, we'll take our chances and come to the United States. So that's how immigration occurs. I mean, why do the Pilgrims come to the United States? It's good because they had this weird religious cult, and the Church of England didn't like them, so they thought, okay, well, we'll just get out of England and go on the Mayflower and come to the New World, so to speak, and then we'll go, and once we're there, we can go and kill Indians and become filthy rich. So that's the story of U.S. immigration for many of them, aside from the many honest people who are just trying to get by. So here's some facts about immigrants and their alleged threat to good Americans. President Trump and his right-wing, dare I say, fascistic friends constantly complain about immigrants and their alleged criminality. Here's some AI-aided research. The figure of 13.7 undocumented or unauthorized illegal immigrants in the U.S. aligns with recent estimates from sources like the Migration Policy Institute, which reported about 13.7 million as of mid-2023, reflecting growth from around 11 million in prior years due to factors like increased border arrivals and asylum seekers. No official government source or comprehensive study provides an exact nationwide count of how many of these individuals have been shown to be involved in criminal activity, as this would require tracking every person's criminal history, arrests, convictions, and so on. And this data isn't fully centralized or publicly broken down by immigration status for the entire undocumented population. So being undocumented is a civil immigration violation, not a criminal offense in most cases. But reliable research consistently shows that undocumented immigrants commit crimes at lower rates than US-born citizens for both violent and nonviolent offenses. The key points from peer-reviewed studies and analyses show that multiple studies, for example, Texas data, the only state with detailed arrest conviction records by immigration status, find undocumented immigrants have substantially lower felony arrest and conviction rates than native-born Americans. For example, U.S. citizens are over 2.5 times more likely to be arrested for violent crimes, 2.5 times for drug crimes, and 4.5 for property crimes compared to undocumented immigrants. Incarceration rates provide a proxy. A 2023 Cato Institute analysis estimated undocumented immigrants had an incarceration rate of about 613 per 100,000, which is roughly half that of native-born Americans at 1,221 per 100,000. This covers both violent and nonviolent crimes leading to imprisonment. So broader trends show no evidence that increases in undocumented immigration raise overall crime rates. And in fact, areas with higher immigration populations often see declining crime. Government data from ICE and DHS focuses on enforcement actions, not the full population. So the ICE data, as of late 2025, shows a majority of detainees, often 70% plus in some snapshots, have no criminal convictions. Many offenses among those who do are minor, like traffic violations or DUIs. Claims of high percentages of criminal arrests often include pending charges or immigration-related issues. It goes on here, but in summary, while some undocumented individuals have committed crimes, as in any population, credible evidence indicates that they are involved in criminal activity at lower rates overall than US-born citizens for both nonviolent, that is property and drugs, and violent crimes. No data supports a figure where a large share or even a notable minority of the 13.7 million are proven criminals. So what is this thing with Trump, saying, they're dangerous and terrible and we've got to kick them all out and so on and so forth. So the question is, why pick on Minneapolis? Well, I did a study of this. I did some research on this, and it turns out that in a 50-state study, of course, of all the states, it turns out that Minneapolis ranks 23rd with 9% of the population, the total population are immigrants, and then we have there are non-citizen immigrants, and let's see, Minnesota has 208,000 non-citizen immigrants as of 2023. So let's just keep that in mind: 208,000 versus California, which has 4.8 million non-citizen immigrants. So California's got a huge number. The numbers are basically, there's like 4.8 million in Florida. New York has 1.8. Florida has 2.1. Texas has 3.1. Illinois has 887,000. And you go down the line here, and basically you have, as I mentioned, Minnesota has a total of roughly, roughly 208,000. Then they have another chart here which shows, and this is below this video, the number of undocumented, and these are 3 estimates. And basically, it shows that they have a Center for Migration Studies, Pew Research Center, and Migration Policy Institute. These are all taken from prior years, but you kind of get the idea. So California has roughly 2 million undocumented immigrants, and New York has 650,000. Texas has 1.6 million. What are some other high ones? Those are the 2 main ones. Florida has 1.1 million, roughly 1 million undocumented immigrants, and Minnesota has a total of under 100,000. So the question arises, why Minnesota? Why is ICE in Minnesota when they have a far lower percentage of the population are immigrants and far lower of them are undocumented? It's like 100,000 versus what is it in California, 1.8 million. So it's like dramatically less. Why is ICE there? Further research shows that Minnesota's share is roughly 100,000 to 130,000 out of a total of 13.7 million people nationally. This equates to roughly 7.7 to, it has less than 1% of the total U.S. undocumented population. So Minnesota has less than 1% of the total U.S. undocumented population, and yet ICE has gone in there and basically is, it looks like a war zone, from looking from outside. So just reading on here again, Minnesota has a relatively low concentration of undocumented immigrants compared to the national average and ranks far behind the top states in absolute numbers. These estimates are derived from residual methods using census data, adjusted for undercounts and legal status indicators with margins of error typically plus or minus 10 to 20,000. So there's been no major 2025 specific state breakdown overrides the 2023 data in available sources, though national trends suggest limited dramatic shifts in distribution. So the question arises, what is the big deal about ICE having such a huge presence in Minnesota? Well, it's obviously created a lot of antipathy towards it because you see the videos of them, snatching people off the street and beating people up and so on. So my German friend pointed a video out to me from some YouTube channel, which is clearly in the pro-Trump and anti-immigrant camp. And so there's a video clip of Alex Preddy kicking out the rear tail light of an ICE vehicle. And now, why did he do that? Well, it's probably because he's really pissed at what ICE is doing, and so he got angry and he thought, I'm going to kick out the rear tail light of this vehicle. So a German friend of mine defends the ICE action because Preddy is a felon for kicking out the rear taillight of a van. So Preddy uses his foot to kick out the headlight of a vehicle. He didn't attack ICE with his legal weapon, which was holstered, and ICE, acting as police, judge, jury, and executioner, shot him in the back 9 times. So he kicks out the rear tail light. He kicks out the back of a vehicle, and they shoot him in the back 9 times. And after he's already been blinded by pepper spray and on his knees. And I asked myself, you wonder why Germany started 2 world wars, destroyed Yugoslavia, and backs the fascist regime in Kiev. What do these German people think? They think, oh, the United States, it's fine for the holdovers of the SA and SS in Nazi Germany to go around terrorizing people, cooking up excuses to do it. So this is what we're facing here, and this is the reason why is the Ukraine war going on so long? It's because the Germans are cooking up trouble and they blame Russia for it. Here's this case of somebody who knows nothing about the United States, nothing about its history, nothing about its constitution, and is making judgments against people who resist terror tactics of Trump's private army, which is exactly what it is. So my conclusion here is that this whole situation going on in Minneapolis, it appears to me a fascistic provocation against a decidedly blue anti-Trump state. We can characterize this as a preventive color revolution. In other words, when the United States wants to disrupt a society, wreck it, and then create a regime change in it, it will provoke dissident elements within the society to stir up trouble, and then the government cracks down on them, and then the United States says, "Oh, human rights violations," and that gives them the right to do with destroy another country. Trump has just said, the Iranian government just after taking down Starlink, thanks to the Chinese and the Russians, find out that Iran had thousands of infiltrators who were responsible for serious violent riots, and when they round them up, the United States says, "Oh, human rights violations." So it's okay for the U.S. to stir up trouble in Iran, but if people rise up against ICE, that's a problem. And they present some kind of evidence that George Soros is behind it. So in other words, George Soros is trying to stir up a color revolution. But you see these videos of all these people, they are pissed. They don't need George Soros. They don't have to get paid by George Soros to tell them that they're really pissed at the U.S. government and Donald Trump, who has broken every one of his promises. So the point here is that Trump's strategy is to provoke a population, blame it for an insurrection in order to initiate mass repression. In addition, it risks far more serious civil conflict. And meanwhile, while the population is engaged resisting government repression at home, the U.S. is sending a huge armada to destroy Iran. Now, I want to, this word armada reminds me of the Spanish Armada, which was this huge naval fleet that the Empire of Spain sent to England to kind of keep England in its place back in 1588. But unfortunately for the Spanish, Sir Francis Drake and another colleague of his outsmarted the Spanish and sank a significant part of the Spanish Armada. So Donald Trump thinks he's going to go to Iran, which is bristling with missiles and drones and mini submarines and all these kinds of things, and thinks that he's going to take down Iran, and he may be in for a serious shock. So there's that, and then of course, and meanwhile, he's threatening his ally Denmark with stealing Greenland, despite the fact that neither the Danes nor the Greenlanders want to have anything and be any part of the United States. Of course, they want to take down Canada as well, and they're threatening Canada because Trump says Canada's going to pay a lot of tariffs. So Canada says, "Okay, well, we'll just do business with the Chinese." "You can't do any business with the Chinese. We own you. You will do as we say." This is U.S. foreign policy. And of course, the U.S. is continuing its surreptitious support of Ukrainian Nazi regime to take down Russia while stealing Ukraine's resources. And it's providing weapons to continue the genocide of the Palestinians. And it's bombing a total of 10 countries, none of whom pose any threat. So this is the context. We need to see things in their totality. I call this class war at home and endless war abroad, where people the government they've been at this for decades or maybe even centuries. A friend of mine just sent me an article about how some I think it was coal miners who were engaged in a strike, and the company sent in some thugs to catch these guys, put them into boxcars and trains in 90-degree heat with no water, and shipped them out of the state so that they had no ability to strike anymore. So this is how you know this is how things operate in the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's really unbelievable, and it's heartening to me to see that there are people who are kind of seeing through this. Although my concern is that they direct their hostility towards Trump rather than the system itself. So we'll have to see how all this ends up. But at least people, they recognize the fact that most immigrants here are hardworking. They're just trying to get by, and then the government comes in and causes all this trouble, and it's all a distraction from to cause the population to pay attention to these things at home rather than building an anti-nuclear and anti-military resistance movement with the United States. Trump is going to increase the military budget by 50%, $500 billion, when we're already, trillions of dollars in debt. This is the answer to the problem. So this is what we're dealing with, and so I'm just trying to bring these issues to your attention. A friend of mine had posted something on Facebook about this, and about Trump's misdeeds, and so I did some research. That's the reason why I'm making this video, is because I did some research to see, well, exactly what is the problem. And it turns out there isn't an immigration problem. There isn't an immigration crime problem. It's all cooked up. So that's what we're dealing with here. We have to really keep our eyes on the ball and see what the context is and what's going on behind the scenes, why things are the way they are. So if you will, please, I appreciate your watching my video all the way through, and giving me a like or a share, or even subscribing to my Substack channel, or buying one of my T-shirts. I call them my information billboard T-shirts. So thanks again for listening, and I will talk with you again soon.